Welcome to the Live Well program. I am so glad that you joined us today. We've been on this journey for probably about 8 months now, and we've talked about many things as it relates to our mind, our body, and our spirit, and how to live our best life. In fact, we want to live the abundant life, the life that God has promised to us in His Word in John 10:10. So today we have a very special topic, and we're going to be talking about peace during grief. And that is one topic that we have not talked about. We've talked about food, we've talked about drink, we've talked about exercise, we've talked about many things, but we have not talked about grief. And so we know that we are living in a time that this is a topic that is very relevant. I do want to remind our listeners today that this presentation is for educational purposes only. The information that we share may be personal experiences, biblical scripture, and even research. But we want to let you know that we do not assess, we do not diagnose, prescribe, or treat any medical conditions. So if you have a particular condition that you're concerned about, we do ask that you seek advice from your physician. Again, this is for educational purposes only, but we do encourage you to take notes because there may be something that you hear that you can take away that you can begin using today without the advice of your physician. And so we know that over the last 18 months, almost 2 years, we have gone through many losses. People have lost their jobs. Have been standing in line for various reasons, unemployment. People have lost loved ones. We've lost homes, we've lost jobs. So there's been a lot of losses. And so we want to talk about losses. But in the Bible, I feel so very assured, particularly when we lose loved ones. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. And that's in Matthew 5:4. And so we are blessed today that we know that while we're grieving and while we're stressed, we know that it's so very important to take care of our health, not only physical health, but mental and spiritual health. And so today I want to introduce you to our speaker. This is a dear friend of mine, Dr. Nicole Arkadie. She's a mental health expert. She's a keynote speaker. She's a professor, therapist, and a published author. So I want to welcome you, Dr. Nikki. Welcome. I'm so glad that you joined our Live Well program today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here because living well, our wellness is so very important. When we're talking about spiritual wealth, physical wealth, mental wealth, right? Our wellness. And oftentimes that, unfortunately, the mental health piece of it is one that we often overlook and, don't really think so much about. One of the things I often say is when someone is physically sick, you can see that manifestation, right? So those symptoms. And so it's easier to go to the doctor and get help. But then when you have something that's more on the inside and the mental health side of it, oftentimes it's overlooked. Oftentimes it may be dismissed, or oftentimes people may not really understand because they can't see it, right? That something's going on with the person on the inside. And so it's so very important that we are taking care of ourselves. So did you want me to dive in, or did you have questions for me?
You go right on. Dive in.
Okay. So when you asked me to talk about this topic, it's a topic, unfortunately, that is very prevalent right now, right? And so a lot of us right now are experiencing grief and we're experiencing loss, right? With a lot of things that are going on, more so now than probably before, or we're touched more so by people that we are now seeing that are no longer here with us. And so what can happen is we can have these myths about how we're supposed to feel, or how we're supposed to process, or how we're supposed to grieve. And these myths that we have, or these negative views, can actually prevent us from being able to properly grieve and go through that process, right? And so one of the things is important to recognize that everyone will grieve differently because we're all individuals. And so to be kind to yourselves during this process is going to help you through the process. And I want to just pause and say it is a process, right? And we can't speed up the process. Oftentimes people want to hurry up and get through it. I'll be happy when I get to the other side. I can't wait till this time is over and I can get to X, Y, and Z. But like baking a cake, you have to go through the process, right? You have to mix all the ingredients in, put it in the oven, and you have to wait until it's time to take it out, because if you take it out too quickly, then you run the risk of it being ruined, not tasting well, not being great. And so when we're grieving, we definitely have to go through the process. But first and foremost, we have to allow ourselves to feel. I mean, that sounds simple, but it can be very challenging to allow ourselves to feel however we're feeling without being negative to ourselves, without saying, oh, you shouldn't feel this way, without saying, well, it's too long. You still sad? Why don't you hurry up and get through this? So it's being kind to ourselves as we're going through this process of grieving, as we're going through this pain. It's being able to allow yourself to feel however you're feeling. I often like to say your feelings are your feelings and they can't be wrong because they're your feelings. And so no one has the right to tell you that you cannot feel or you should not be feeling how you're feeling. It's really just allowing yourself to be able to go through those feelings. So what we do realize is we have a framework for grieving. Although everyone is different, right, in how they may process their grief, there has been a framework that Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, you may be familiar with, a psychiatrist who actually came up with this framework of saying when we experience loss, that typically there are stages that we will go through, right? And so a person will experience. And so the 5 stages of grief and loss are denial, right? We have anger, we have bargaining, we have depression, and then we finally have the acceptance stage. Now, these stages are interchangeable. So someone may start at the denial stage and then jump right into the bargaining stage. So you don't have to go through each of the stage step by step, one after the other. And so what happens is we go through these different stages. It's a way to help us process the grief. It's a way towards healing. So if you don't process your grief, it just prolongs the healing. I've had people who have experienced a loss of a loved one, and it could have been 5 years ago, and they still feel like they haven't processed it because they didn't allow themselves to feel, right? There's different things that we may tell ourselves. The reason why we can't allow ourselves to grieve is, I don't have time for that. Maybe you have a busy life. Maybe you're the caregiver of a lot of people. Maybe you have your work commitments and different things, and you tell yourself, I don't have time to grieve. Or that fear of, if I start to cry, I won't be able to stop, right? I can't do that because I won't be able to stop. I'm going to end up somewhere in the hospital if I allow myself to start crying, right? Or what will other people think about me, right? I have to be the strong one for everyone else. So these are just the negative thoughts or things that we tell ourselves that prevent us from allowing ourselves to properly feel however we are feeling, because this is extreme pain. Death and loss is a natural part of the process. It's unfortunate we don't live forever, right? So we will experience the loss of a loved one at some point in our lives. And so that's normal, which means it's normal for us to have that pain. It's normal for us to have these feelings that we may not even know what to do to find ourselves on the other side of it, right? So now I've talked about the pain, having the loss, the need to be able to make sure you are allowing yourself to feel however you're feeling. And when I say that, one of the things that you can do is, I often tell my clients, allow yourselves to give yourself permission to cry. I mean, that's a big thing, because for many of us, we may not even allow ourselves that space and that grace to be able to do that. And then I say, okay, well, set aside some time where you can allow yourself. You're saying, if I have people tell me, well, I'm just too busy, I just don't have the time for that right now. I say, okay, well, set aside some time so that you can allow yourself to feel however you're feeling. If it's 30 minutes, right? If you're crying and whatever it is, allow yourself to feel what you're feeling, because you're human. And to feel is to be human. So we have to still allow ourselves the ability to process and experience whatever we are experiencing. It's when we prevent ourselves from doing that is when we once again stop. I don't want to say stop, but we slow down the healing process, or we prolong the healing process. And that is the thing that's a challenge. So there are definitely ways that we cope with the grieving that we're going through. And so to help you through that process, I can't say enough is, being kind to yourself during the process is a major thing that we want to make sure that we are doing, because when we are kind to ourselves during the process, we're recognizing that I'm human. We're recognizing that it's okay to feel how I'm feeling, and we're not negative and mean towards ourselves. We're not using negative statements about ourselves. It's allowing yourself to feel whatever emotions that you're feeling. It's telling yourself it's okay to cry. It's okay to be sad right now. You may have a day when you say, you know what, today is just going to be a day that I allow myself to do nothing, right? I just allow myself, I just want to sit here. It's okay, right? Now, there are some signs that if you start to feel as if you are not able to get up out of bed, and you're not able to engage in life, or you're not able to, do your basic hygiene. If you're doing that for long periods of time, then I would say, you want to seek the assistance of a mental health professional, because then that may be going a little longer with regards to it's really preventing you from being able to engage in life. But outside of that, you can't rush it. You just can't rush the process. It's reminding yourself that grieving is a process, and that process is going to take some time to work through it. Because what can happen is, depending on the way the loved one died, can also impact the grieving process. It's different if it's a loved one that we were anticipating, because maybe they had an illness, right? Or maybe they were elderly and they were not in the best of health. That's different compared to if it's an unexpected death, right? The unexpected deaths are the ones that take us by surprise, and it can be more difficult and challenging to be able to process and come to terms with that, because it was unexpected, or if it was a tragic way that the person passed away, can complicate the grieving process, because you have to deal with the event of what occurred on top of dealing with the loss of that loved one and that individual, right? Other coping mechanisms that you can do is journaling. Journaling your thoughts out loud, your feelings, is a great way of being able to process how you're feeling. Talking out loud to God is a great way, right? Because one, you're helping with that connection with you and God, and you're also getting those thoughts and feelings out. You're not keeping them shoved down on the inside to where they're building. And some people have explosions, right, with how it may look. So that's a great way of being able to do that. Having a support system is another amazing way. Being able to lean on your loved ones, your friends, and those people who care about you is a great way to help you through this process. This is a time where you come together and you allow other people to be a support and a help to you. Because often what happens, if you're the individual that everyone comes to, if you're the individual that's always there to support everyone else, it may be a challenge for you to, I'm gonna pause for a second, for you to allow someone else to help you, to allow someone else to be that support, to be there for you like you've been there for them and for others. And so that can be a really challenging thing with that. So just speaking to your loved ones about how you're feeling during this process. Also, you can join a support group. The great thing now that's come out of our pandemic is a lot of virtual things, like we're doing virtual right now. And so joining a virtual support group is a great way to be able to help you process, because you have other like-minded individuals who are also experiencing the same thing that you're experiencing. So it just can lead to helping you feel a little bit more comfortable, because they understand exactly what you're going through, because they themselves have gone through the same thing. So that's a great thing to be able to do. Also, engaging in activities that are enjoyable, taking up a new hobby, right, is a great thing to be able to do. I myself, I started gardening. I was never a gardener. I did not have a green thumb. I mean, everything I tried to do died. My husband killed a cactus. So you can tell how horrible we were with gardening. But after I experienced the death of my loved one, of my younger sibling, gardening was a great way of getting out, seeing things nurture, seeing things grow, starting from the beginning, seeing the fruits of my labor, right? You can do photography. There's different things that you can do to be able to help you through this process. One of the things you do absolutely want to do is avoid the use of alcohol and drugs, because that can be what we call a maladaptive. So a negative coping mechanism that people may use. Sorry, you just saw someone, my husband, walk in the background. Sorry about that. But it is a negative maladaptive coping mechanism that people use because they can't deal with the intense feelings and the intense pain and hurt that they're having at that moment. And so you definitely want to avoid the use of substances, because it's not at all going to help. It's going to exacerbate the feelings, and it just prevents you from being able to really feel how you are feeling in that moment. So a part of what, this wellness, and we're talking about wholeness and being able to really work through and deal with your grief and finding that peace, is first and foremost, and I can't say it and stress it enough, is allowing yourself to feel however you are feeling, without trying to stunt it, without shutting down your feelings, turning off your emotions, but allowing yourself to feel. Another great intervention that I like with helping to process and move through the grief is writing a letter to your loved one. That can definitely be a way of finding closure, or just finding closure in yourself. So just writing a letter of how you're feeling, saying goodbye, is a great way of being able to process and work through those feelings of sadness that you have. If you notice, the key common component here has been, you have to process. So by processing your grief and loss, that means you have to work through whatever those feelings are by verbalizing your thoughts and feelings, right? It can be out loud. It is writing it out, right? Being able to work through that. It's acknowledging that you're having those feelings and allowing yourself to feel however you are feeling, and being kind to yourself through the process. When we're kind to ourselves, having self-compassion is typically, compassion is a term that we all are taught. When we see someone that's going through something painful or they're hurting, we want to alleviate that pain and suffering from them. We want to stop and prevent them from having those feelings. Well, self-compassion is just compassion turned inwards. It's recognizing that I'm human. I'm going to feel. When I have pain, it's okay. It's being kind to myself. It's being non-judgmental to myself as I'm going through this process. And once again, it's not trying to rush the process, because the process is going to be the process. Your pain is your pain, and you will experience it the way you experience it. And try not to compare yourselves to someone else. Well, man, I mean, they seem to have gotten over it so much quicker. How come they seem to be doing better? Don't compare yourself. Comparison is the robber and thief of joy. I'm going to say that one again. Comparison is the robber and the thief of joy, because we are all individuals, and our process and our pain is our pain, and we are going to process it the way that we do and experience it the way that we do. So it's just allowing yourself to feel what you're going to feel and being kind to yourselves through the process, right? So I don't know how the process is. So you want me now to be able to allow questions or any comments? You're muted.
I would absolutely love, I mean, you've gone over quite a bit of information about the process of grief, things that we can do to help work through the process, not comparing ourselves, just taking it step by step. But I would love to open it up for our audience to see what questions that they may have, because we all have lost somebody in this life. I mean, my family, we lost our parents last year, So when birthdays and holidays come around and they're not there, this is the first time, let's say a Christmas without them, or the first Thanksgiving, or the first birthday, or, so I know that I'm not alone. People may have lost loved ones, whether it was, a year ago or 10 years ago. We know that that pain can actually sometimes rise up when you least expect it.
Yes.
And so I would love to open it up. I don't see any questions in the chat, but people can open their mic if they have any questions for Dr. Nikki regarding grief.
And I want to just comment really fast on something you just said, because that's so pivotal, is that pain can just rise up at any moment. You could be walking in the grocery store, right? And then something triggers and you start to cry. You may, be at a movie theater, out somewhere. It's okay. Because what we typically would do is, oh, I can't do that right now. And we clam up and we just suck it back in, right? Go to the bathroom, allow yourself to cry. I was at a museum and I'm looking at all these things with my kids. And I'm like, went to the restroom and allowed myself just to cry, because I had to allow myself to experience it and work through those feelings. It's when we stop it that it prolongs our healing process, because we have to be able to allow whatever we're feeling to feel without feeling shameful, or without telling ourselves we shouldn't feel that way, or we can't do this kind of a thing. And so you're right, when you have those first holidays or first birthdays or first major events of your life, right? Some milestones. Oh, I wish so-and-so, oh, they can't be, right? That's normal. That's natural to have those types of feelings. And so it's okay, right, to have those feelings. And oftentimes I have people say, well, when am I going to not feel this pain? When am I not going to feel like this? Everyone's different, right? But as the time goes on, you can look back and you can have those nice memories, right? And you can smile where it's not as painful as it was. And you're able to just say, you know what? I remember when they did X, Y, and Z, right? Another great way of being able to help you with coping with the loss of a loved one is looking at nice pictures of them having fun, or when you had nice things that you were doing with them and activities, watching videos, right, of your loved one, when they were happy, when you were happy, when you were doing those different fun things, because it's giving yourself and reminding yourself an image, right, of a happy moment that you have with your loved one. And so that's also another way of being able to process and work through your grief.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Dr. Nikki, because many times when someone passes on, especially if it's been traumatic, people don't want to talk about it. They don't bring that person up as if they never existed, know. And so I think that is unhealthy, because that life, that valuable life that was lost, had value when they were here. And you want to be able to talk about it, but there's sometimes people like, as soon as that name comes up, they move on to another subject or something else, because it's so uncomfortable. But I think I would say to our audience, allow them to talk about those memories regarding their loved one, because it was important. They shared those together.
Yes, sharing together. That's a great time for family members to really bond and to really be there as a support, because they're experiencing that loss together, instead of saying, well, we don't want to talk about that, it's going to make her sad. No, let's talk about it. You remember when so-and-so did, or remember how they used to do this, or right, sharing those nice memories that you have of the individual. That's a great way. And like you were saying, it is definitely unhealthy if we are stunting and saying, no, we don't talk about it. Particularly, I'm going to go with younger children. We have seen where parents will take down pictures or not even mentioning, because we don't want to hurt the child. We don't want them to know. And they're still, and the child is confused and not understanding they were here one day, and then we're not talking about them. That's not helpful. So allowing your child to work through that also by having conversations with them, by, talking about the individual. And what we do know is it is uncomfortable. When someone has lost a loved one, oftentimes we don't know what to say to them. So we may not say anything because we're like, I don't know what to say. It's very uncomfortable. Seeing someone in pain, it doesn't feel good to you. You want to help them, but you realize there's nothing I can say that's going to be helpful, right? So sometimes the one thing that you can do, and the best thing you can do, is just be there. They may not need you to say anything. Just to be a present body there, they know that you're there and have their support, can definitely be helpful. Or just allowing someone to be there for you. just sitting with you in a moment where you may just be silent, or you just may, be crying, and you may not even need them to say anything, but knowing that their presence is there can definitely be helpful. One thing I'll say is reach out. We're not on an island, alone. So being able to allow other people to help us support us and be a support is going to be definitely helpful.
Great.
Mhm.
Any questions?
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of my questions was, what do you tell someone who is grieving? Because I know working in the hospital situation, and especially with the pandemic that we're going through, we are seeing so many deaths,
Yeah.
different ages. And this family member comes in, and their family member is either dying or already died. What are you going to tell them? How, what is, sometimes you don't have words to tell them. What do you say to these individuals? How do you help them, with this first, notice, or this first, message you're going to tell them that, I'm sorry, your loved one just passed.
Yeah.
What else do you say to them?
Yeah. And so you bring up that's a very good question, because yours is in a different situation because you're in the hospital setting, right? So you're in a more professional capacity when you're talking to individuals who have experienced, the death of their loved one, and you may be the first person that's telling them this, right? So you definitely got to make sure you're taking care of yourself, because that can be very overwhelming, right? And it can lead to burnout and a lot of other negative emotional symptoms, because you're dealing with so much yourself, because you're the helper, right? And having to do this. So from the professional standpoint, when you're going to talk to someone, you definitely want to be, which I'm pretty sure you are, compassionate in nature, right? When you're going in there and you're letting them know, I'm so sorry that I have to tell you this information, but your loved one or just passed away or is no longer with us. Please let me know if there's anything I can do for you right now. And you may have some limitations in the work environment, because each workplace has different regulations of what you can and cannot do. Human touch is always a great thing. And that's been the negative thing with the pandemic, right? So that's been one of the things where, just a hand on the other hand, or just a hand on the shoulder, or just being there present, right? But that human touch is definitely something that is helpful when we're going through that. Outside of the professional setting, if it's just someone that right, a friend or a colleague, or just someone that's not in a more professional setting, when you hear it, it can be shocking to you also, right? If of hearing that information. And once again, it's just, I don't have any words. I'm sorry, just know that I'm here. Anything that you may need, just let me know. You don't have to have any words. You don't have to manufacture them. Just letting the person know that you're there whenever they need, if they need to talk or whatever, that you're available is a great thing to be able to offer and provide, because they may not in that moment really need anything, because they are still dealing with the shock of it all. But definitely taking care of yourself. I'm sorry, go ahead, Julia.
Can I say something here? I think in this case, saying less is best.
I like that
We
phrase.
have to watch what we say, and we cannot say like, I understand how you feel. Because everybody process and cope differently. And at times, just the way our face look, our empathy could be shown in our face. Yes.
I love that. I'm gonna use that phrase. Less is best.
Thank you. I like that one too.
Really? That down. I love that. Thank you. That is so true.
Okay. Yeah.
Less is best, right? So being mindful. And as Juliet was saying, over 75 to 85% of how we communicate is non-verbally. So it's not what we say, it's our body expressions, our gestures. So what it looks like on my face when I'm saying it, right? So being mindful of that as well. And so, but thank you for that, Juliet.
Oh, you're welcome.
I think you bring up a really good point, as we talk about, going through the process. It may take a short time or a long time, but I think that we cannot, even brothers and sisters go through grief differently.
Oh, yes.
And so I think even within the same family, if someone is like they've moved on and they're living happily ever after, we have to accept that they have worked through it. if there's still people who are tearful about it or very sad about it, that we allow them to experience that grief in their own way, you know. So I think that's, and one thing I would say is, you know, we need to be mindful when we have friends and family members who've lost loved ones to stay in touch with them after the fact, because we know that we get showered and crowded, and you know, when we're leading up to the services or immediately after it happens, and that can be a lot of stimulation. And then after it's all said and done, you know, maybe a week or two, you're there sitting by yourself and you wish somebody would call, or you wish someone would drop your card, or you wish someone would reach back out, because it's still, the grief is still going on. You know what I'm saying? You're still working through that process. So I'm saying it out loud because I know that I have to be mindful also to continue to reach back, you know, to family members and friends, and really try to just say, I'm thinking about you, you know. You don't have
sending a quick text can be something also, if you don't, because people may think, oh, I don't have the time or whatever, you know, I'm thinking about you, or right. And that's a great thing, that reaching back is a great thing.
And that's why it's so important for us to take care of ourselves, because everybody mean well, but people get tied up with their schedule. So it's very important to take care of ourselves. And in the Black culture, we tend to think counseling is something that means you are crazy. And that is not true. We have to accept we need help, and we have to seek out that help.
Yes. No, absolutely. You're absolutely correct. That is one of the things that I can definitely say, that since 2020, I have seen an increase of the clients who have come to see me, because I am a mental health therapist. And so I definitely can say I've seen a high increase, because that has been a stigma within our own community of going to go get help. I don't need any help. I'm not crazy. I'm not, right? Or what are they going to say? I'll just pray about it. Now, I'm not telling you not to pray about it, right? But you also at times may need someone to help you through this humanly flesh that we have right here, and work through those feelings and process and be able to manage those. And so it's unfortunate the way we may view mental health or illness, right? Things that we go through, because when we have, as I said, we have a physical illness, someone was diagnosed with a terminal illness or cancer or whatnot, we would think nothing about them going to the doctor, getting treatment, getting medication. But then when it's on the inside and it's mental health, right? Well, what's wrong with it? You don't have to go see a doctor or take medication, right? And so it's just unfortunate the way that we view internal things and psychological, because we can't see it on the outside, right? Versus when you see someone that may have a physical manifestation.
That's a very good point. I look like I have.
And another point is, I'm not against preachers, but preachers are there to preach God's word. So we have to seek the right person. Therapists, social workers, that's what they are there for. You know, some people believe just going to I'm the pastor. The pastors could help us in a spiritual way, but they are not trained as therapists or in the mental health field. Actually,
you bring a good point. So, I mean, we do have spiritual and pastoral counseling, right? My husband is a pastor, so he recognizes his areas of what he does, and he will tell people, hey, you know what, that's something you need to go and see a mental health therapist for. And so if we can become more integrated, right, within our spiritual and church settings, we're seeing more of a push for that, where you're seeing churches understanding and recognizing the importance of mental health and having someone that is a trained professional to come in and speak about it. That is something that, because we see the significance of, my husband and I actually go to different churches and help them with understanding how to incorporate the making that connection, right, that bridge with the community and with mental health, of being able to do that. And so you're right, Julia. I mean, that's the unfortunate thing. And it's okay when to recognize that you need help, right? One of my sayings is, asking for help doesn't make you less than, it makes you human. And so we can just, get bogged down with this myth that, I'm superwoman, are Wonder Woman and Superman, and I am, I'm not supposed to feel or go through or experience, and we do, because we're human. So we're going to experience things. And I can't say enough, just being kind to yourself when you are going through this.
And there's a question in the chat box, Dr. Nikki, that I'm going to read. I have a friend lost her mother several years ago. They were very close, but she still is very distraught. And I asked her, what does she think her mother would want her to do going forward? Am I wrong for suggesting this?
No, I mean, that's a good question, because she's feeling the pain of her mom. So what I am taking from this question is that the individual is asking her friend, would your mom want you to feel sad still? Would your mom want you not to engage in life and enjoy life? What would your mom want for you? Right? What would your mom have for you to do? Kind of thing. That's what I'm taking from that. And so, no, she's not wrong in that, in asking that question, because sometimes it may take having that kind of a question to help the other person be reflective and kind of go, you know what, I didn't think about this, right? Or I always like to reframe it like the same way. And let's say if it was a sibling or something that passed away, and say, well, if you weren't here, would you want your sibling to still be sad? Or would you want your sibling to not do these types of things? And they'll go, well, no, I want them engaged life. And I say, so wouldn't they want the same for you? Right? So just reminding that the person who you love loves you. And so they definitely wouldn't want you still continue to be distraught and not engaging in life. One of my other sayings, I love saying, so thank you, Juliet, because less is best, is I'm adding to that. But one of my other sayings is life is for the living. And that is one of the things I definitely had to take to heart, because we experienced a tragic death with the loss of my youngest sibling in 2020. And so I had to look at, you know what, life is for the living. So I'm going to live. I'm choosing to live. And that means doing what people do when we live, right? Engaging in life to the fullest, because we are not promised tomorrow. So it's recognizing I need to make sure I'm eating well, right? Taking care of my physical body. It means I need to make sure that I'm exercising. I need to make sure that I am doing activities that make me feel good and make me feel enjoyable. I'm taking vacations. I'm spending time with my loved ones, right? So it's engaging in life versus being a spectator on the sidelines to life, right? Because we can just look at life on the sidelines and let it pass us by, versus being actively engaged and enjoying life.
Absolutely. Dr. Nikki, that's great. That actually is a great lead, and I'm just going to share a few slides about, and then we'll open it back up for questions once I get through them. But, we have gone through a lot about how to deal with loss and grief. And this is important that we have those conversations. And Dr. Nikki just kind of led into, we have to eat nutritious foods. Sugar, caffeine, alcohol, those things are not helpful when you're under a lot of stress. Those actually add stress to the body, adds inflammation to the body. You want to eat foods that are going to boost your immune system, because you're already at risk when you're grieving the loss of a loved one. Keep moving. If you're laying in bed for hours and hours and sitting in the same space for hours and hours, it is not healthy. You need to move about, get your muscles moving, keep your lungs breathing, keep your heart beating. Keep moving, get an exercise routine, walking 15 to 20 to 30 minutes a day. Exercise is a good stress buster, and you want to make sure that you boost your immune system and your mood by exercising. Rest is the best. I'm going to say that. Rest is the best. Many times when we go through stressful situations, we keep pushing ourselves. And really, it is important to get to 6 to 8 hours of sleep per night. The body needs to rest and rejuvenate. When the body is tired, it puts you at risk for personal disease, and it's things that are going to happen to you. So you want to make sure that you set a bedtime, take a nap during the day if you need to, but you want to make sure that when you're under a lot of stress or grieving a great loss, that your body is rejuvenated. And take your vitamins, and vitamins can be through your food, green leafy vegetables, carrots, sweet potatoes, different nuts and things like that give you the protein, the omega-3s that you need. Flaxseed is really good for that. And there's many other things that are good for vitamins that will help with boosting your mood. Now, granted, it's mind over matter. You have to put your mind in the mind frame that you want to be better and you want to be able to cope with it. Not that you want to maybe move beyond it, but you want to be able to balance the loss with actually balance with your daily life and being able to keep it in balance. I like what Dr. Nikki said, self-compassion, care for yourself, be kind to yourself. So self-care is critical. It is okay if you say no to people who've been asking you, to do things if you're not feeling up to it, because you want to be at your best when you can, when you're around individuals. And then pray and read your scriptures. That is where we can find strength. That is where we can find comfort in the word of God. And so it's important. These are all types of foods. You want to aim to balance your stress hormones by getting adequate nutrients for your brain. Your brain triggers how you feel. And you want to make sure that you prevent and reduce any type of inflammation in your body. As I mentioned, sugars and certain foods will trigger that inflammation. You don't want it. You really want to eat a nutritious diet, almonds, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, beans, lentils, green leafy vegetables. Bell pepper is really high in vitamin C, really good to include in your diet. Sweet potatoes, cucumber, and avocado. There's many foods that you can add into your diet and eat well. The key word is eating well so that you can feel well, because when you're grieving, oftentimes we don't feel very well. So make sure that you're not deficient in your vitamins, vitamin B6 and B12 and vitamin C and E. Make sure you get plenty of magnesium and omega-3s, and then even probiotics. That's very common that people are using probiotics now, which will help with the gut health. And then your proteins, eating healthy proteins, preferably those that are coming from beans and natural plants. Those are the best. And then you want to maintain a healthy blood sugar. When our blood sugar dips, we feel very lethargic. Oftentimes we don't feel well. And so we want to make sure that we keep a healthy blood sugar by eating at regular times. Do not starve yourself, but do not binge eat either. Because when we binge eat, oftentimes we're eating the foods that are not the healthiest for us. And so there's some scriptures in the Bible. There's peace that comes from God. We've been talking today about peace during grief, peace during grief. And we know that peace comes from God. And so there's a verse in 1 Peter 5:7 that says, cast all your
burdens,
all your cares upon him.
Yes.
Cares for you,
oh,
right?
Yeah, burden.
And then when we look at Psalms 46:10, it says, be still and know that I am who?
God.
God. So when we are still and we know that he's God, what we may have gone through may not feel good, but we know that he is God and he will help us through it. And then Romans 8:28 says, and we what?
We know.
We know.
We know.
We know. I'm gonna hang on to that. We
For
know
those
that all things work together for what?
good.
them too.
That love God, and to them who are called according to his purpose.
According to his purpose.
We say we know that all things work together. That means we trust God. Would you agree?
Yeah.
And we know that they're going to work together for good. It doesn't feel good to lose a loved one. It's difficult, stressful, but we know that God is in control. And then the last verse is from Isaiah 26:3. Thou will keep him in perfect
Peace.
perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee.
Stayed on thee, because he
I said on Jesus.
Okay, so when we look at all of these words, cast your cares upon him, be still and know that I'm God, and we know that all things work together for good, and I will keep him in perfect peace. When we're going through grief,
I stayed on thee.
when we're going through grief, we should have perfect peace. When we're going through grief, we should have perfect peace, because we're going to keep our mind and our eyes stayed on thee. Not that we're not going to ignore it, not that we're going to ignore our feelings. We're going to still do all of that and go through the process, but we should have a sense of peace that as I'm going through this process, God is with me. That's the peace we're talking about. God is with me. When I hurt, when I cry, when I'm angry, and sometimes people are angry because someone died, God is with me. So again, today's conversation really was to talk about really going through that process of grief and then coming on the other side and having that peace that God wants us to have during the grief process. Any more questions? Any questions? We want to make sure we answer them. I don't see any more. So Dr. Nikki, what final words would you give to our audience today?
I like all of what you just went over. One, I just want to just quickly say, I had no idea bell peppers were good in vitamin C. I
Yeah.
have a bell pepper garden out here and I've been eating them. So that's great to know. I'm gonna go snack on some after this. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, the last words I would just say is allow yourselves to feel how you're feeling so that you can work towards healing, right? It's just allowing yourself, being kind to yourself while you're going through this, because you're on the healing process and journey. And if you won't be on the journey if you don't get on the road, right? And so that's just very important to allow yourself to do that. So those are my last words. I will go ahead and put my website in the chat. So if anyone wants some different information, or maybe they, like some wellness, mental wellness information, they can visit that and also see if they need some mental health therapy. We have other therapists on there that they can gain access to be able to look at in that aspect. And so that is something that just being available.
Thank you so much for sharing that information. I would just encourage all of us as we're going through life, even if you're not grieving, eat well, get plenty of a rest,
Yes.
exercise, drink your water, get out in the sunshine. The sunshine is a mood booster all by itself. When you walk out in that sunshine, you can't help but get, energized. And so God has given us all these things that are free because he knew that we would go through grief. He knew that we go through difficult times in our life. He knew that we would go through losses. So I would say to you is if you're not feeling your best, get your rest.
Ooh, I like that.
If you're not feeling your best, make sure you get the rest you need. Rejuvenate your body, your mind, your spirit. Stay connected to God. Let me tell you, there's times you just need to pick up the Bible, even if you don't feel like opening the Bible. Just pull it close to you so that it will be, sometimes we don't feel like reading, eating, or doing anything when we're grieving. But you want to have it close to you so that it just represents, it symbolizes that you are believing and trusting in God during this difficult situation.
Yes.
Amen.
So just hold on to God's unchanging hand. We haven't seen anything yet. We have seen many losses, but more are to come. We wanted to offer this program today because we know that we've gone through losses, but we also know that we're going to be supporting others who also will go through losses. So thank you for joining us today. We like to.
I'm sorry, can I quickly say this? I forgot to mention, if they go to my website, they can also sign up for a newsletter. So I send out a monthly newsletter, all centered around mental wellness, giving different tips and tools on being able to assist.
Great. I like the message that I've always looked for joy in life. It's something you can always be thankful for, always. So I am so glad y'all joined us today. We always open it up for any type of prayer request. I'm going to stop the recording just for that, but you want to join us next week. We actually have a very special presentation from a pharmacist who will be talking about medications. And so many of us know people who are on medications. Some of them are, we just want to learn more about them. So I'm going to open it up for prayer requests. Please join us next week, but I'm going to stop the